week before inauguration, there may be some difficulties with the transition between secretaries. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I don't think so. There's all. I mean, the bottom line is that many of these folks have already met. For example, I keep forgetting names that I haven't mentioned, but Kathy Stepp, who's going to be the Secretary of Natural Resources, already met today with Matt Maroney. Had a meeting with the DNR staff, who's going to be the deputy there. Scott Gunderson, state representative, who's going to be the executive assistant. You've got people who know and understand that state agency well. We're reaching out, meeting with folks. You've had Mike Hipsch working not only with Dan Schoof, the current head of DOA, but Secretary Schoof since day one has been very much working with John Hiller, my transition director, and our team here. You've got the budget staff working day in and day out with Hipsch and his team and the folks he's going to put in place there. So I think if you look agency by agency, they've done a phenomenal job of putting people together. Working in other areas, you look at, see if I talk long enough, I remember every secretary, I forgot, right? Stephanie Klett, who's been the on-air talent and executive producer for Discover Wisconsin, both in the television and radio network. Is something that for the past 18 years she's been working with not only the State Department of Tourism, not in an official capacity, but in her professional capacity outside of government, but also with nearly every major tourist attraction in the state of Wisconsin. These are all people who are well-versed and ready to run, and will be ready to go come next week after I take the oath of office.
Regarding
the one key I should just mention, though, is it's unconventional, but the key is just because we waited till now to announce doesn't mean that people haven't been working. And as I mentioned, with a number of these key positions, Hipsch, Chandler, and others have literally been with me since right after the election, in here working with the key people in this current administration to make sure our transition has been smooth. And as I mentioned several times to many of you in the past, Governor Doyle, while he and I have differences of opinion on politics and some issues, Governor Doyle has been phenomenal, both to me personally, his wife, with my wife Tonette, but also with his staff, Secretary Schoof and others, have been outstanding in terms of reaching out to us, and we very much appreciate that.
Regarding the Commerce Department,
yeah.
there have been some concerns from higher level members under the Doyle administration saying that there's hundreds of contracts or things that haven't been addressed with the new people coming in simply because they've been ignored or known. Do you have concerns about Paul's ability to get up and running and continue those agreements or contracts?
We'll be ready to go. I mean, he deals day in and day out with Commerce right now. It's interesting from their standpoint. We've been working since November 3rd. I literally started making phone calls with the regional economic development entities that are out there in terms of issues they wanted us to move forward on. So all the other economic developments outside of this current State Department of Commerce has been working with this transition team since day one. If those are issues they would have liked to resolve sooner, it'd be interesting if they would have reported that sooner, because everybody else has been working with us, including businesses and regional economic development efforts. But I have no doubt, Paul Jaden was in again earlier today. He's on top of things. He's going to be ready to go on day one. And we're going to make it clear that Wisconsin's open for business.
You've made it clear that you want to save state taxpayers money. What kind of conversations have you had with these secretaries going in about what they might be looking for on day one in terms of ways to save money within the different departments across the state? And there are certainly state employees that are on pins and needles waiting to see what their fate might be in the new year.
The bottom line, our two goals are jobs. Overall it's getting Wisconsin working again, so it's jobs and getting the government itself working to balance this budget. That's incredibly important. I just had a couple of briefings earlier this morning on the state budget, and I have several a day with many of the same people I mentioned that we're making appointments on as far as cabinet secretaries. But our charge more than anything is, and they all have it branded on them, is that we're expecting them to help us create 250,000 new jobs. That's as important as anything else out there. In terms of balancing the budget, we've been going through budget by budget, and it's certainly will take whatever efficiencies they can find. But in most cases, to balance a $3 billion budget deficit, you're talking about overall wage and benefit reforms that will happen not department or agency by agency, but will happen statewide. And you're talking about major programs. You're talking about why Dennis Smith is so incredibly important to us, making reforms in Medicaid that allow us to squeeze more dollars out there while still serving people in need, making changes in terms of local aids, so that we can better balance our budget but still do so in a way that protects core services that our schools and our local governments provide. Those are all things that won't just be on an agency by agency basis, they'll be on an overall budget basis.
Well, the
Scott,
salaries
day one
of
after you put your lunch in the fridge, what's the first thing you do 8:30 Tuesday morning?
On Tuesday morning, well, you know, we're gonna talk about an assessment as to where every state agency is. Later that day, not necessarily the first thing, but that afternoon, I'm gonna be meeting with the full cabinet to get an assessment as to where things are at. Obviously, they've had meetings and part of the transition, but the bottom line is they're gonna find a lot more interesting things come Tuesday morning when they're in the office officially. So that afternoon, we're gonna have a briefing. Probably the most important thing is I'm gonna follow up with legislative leaders in the Assembly and the Senate about moving forward on our special session jobs plan, because that's really the most important thing right now. We need to get that through, we need to get it through quickly, and we need to send a clear message to the employers both within the state as well as those who might want to come to the state that things have changed and it's better to do business here.
Will the salaries of your cabinet secretaries be higher, lower, or the same as the people they replace? How is it decided?
Yeah.
When will they be announced?
For us, we'll put it out early next week when they're being officially put in the office. But overall, our goal was to keep the total amount the same or less than where the current administration's at. That'll
Did you meet that
fluctuate.
call?
What's that?
Did you meet that call?
Yeah.
Of keeping it the same or
Yeah.
less?
Mhm. Yeah, the key was, though, that you're going to have some that are less, they're going to have some that are more, again, depending on background expertise and what it takes to get certain people into those positions. Because as you well aware right now, you have some members of the current cabinet who've been there for some time, and others who are here more recently, and so there are variations in terms of what people got when they first came in and where they're at now, depending on their experience, and so that factored in as well.
Scott, Rick Chandler had made some headlines right after the election talking about or advocating or speaking out about potential sales tax increase. Where do you stand on it?
There's not going to be a tax increase in this administration, in this budget, or in the future. And I should just clarify, Rick Chandler spoke to a group that wanted to know some options out there. He wasn't advocating for any particular option. He spoke on what the different options might be for the state government in the future. And to me, that he's not advocating it, and I certainly am not, so we're comfortable with him in the future.
Scott, the selection of Kathy Stepp might be seen as somewhat antagonistic towards career DNR employees and environmental people around the state. Today, Representative-elect Brett Hulsey said, putting Kathy Stepp in charge of the DNR is like putting Lindsay Lohan in charge of a rehab clinic. I mean, defend Kathy Stepp's environmental record and the selection of her for us.
Sure. In our case, the Department of Natural Resources is going to uphold the laws of the state of Wisconsin. It's not going to go any further than what the laws are. That's the expectation we have, and I think that's a clear message. We're going to have a DNR that's based on science and that's predictive. And I have every confidence she can fulfill that. She served on the Natural Resources Board. She served leading that cause when it comes to natural resources in the state legislature. And in the private sector, she's had personal experience in industries that obviously are very much involved with the Department of Natural Resources. But for us, we're going to conserve. We understand that protect the state's economy. A core portion of that means protecting our natural resources, conserving our natural resources. Farming makes up roughly $60 billion, the state's economic impact. Tourism makes up about $12 billion. Both of those core industries are dependent on good land, water, and air. And so we're going to continue to protect it. But we're going to do it in a way that also balances that responsibility with making sure we do it in a way that doesn't devastate the state's economy. I have every confidence she can balance those two.
Okay, to follow up.
There was some speculation, mostly among Democrats, that the reason this announcement is coming on December 30th is because you had some difficulties recruiting cabinet members. Was it hard to find people to come to join the government in this economy?
No, actually the opposite. We have some people who took significant pay cuts to come work for us. If anything, the biggest challenge we had was deciding amongst a series of exceptionally, in many cases, almost overqualified candidates for these positions. Now, there might be some who are fixated on failure and want that to be the answer, but the simple answer for us is we had an abundance of candidates, and we just wanted to make sure we put the right team together.